The night in Houston was quiet, with only the soft wind weaving through the tree canopies and the dim yellow streetlights stretching along the streets. In that moment of silence, a sleek black car rolled slowly through the intersections, carrying an elderly man home after a long day of work. That man was General Henry Lawson, 52 years old, a four-star general who had been through many brutal battlefields, who had led thousands of soldiers through the toughest trials. The image of him in a neat military uniform, stepping out of the car with calm composure and full of dignity, was like a symbol of strength and resilience. But tonight, amidst this vast and complex city, Henry was facing not only the darkness outside, but also deeper challenges of justice, of power, and the hidden prejudices within society. Just minutes after leaving the military conference center, Henry's car slowed as a police car flashed its red and blue lights behind him. "Pull over to the side immediately," the siren blared. Henry calmly obeyed the order, but inside he felt a chill, not only from the night air, but from the eyes watching him. What seemed like a simple stop would become the turning point, the beginning of a story not just about a general, but about a system, a society tested every day. Are you ready to step into this story with me? Ready to understand strength, injustice, and above all, the perseverance of one man? Because this story begins right here, in the silent Houston night, but with storms ahead. Before we start today's story, leave a comment below and tell us, where are you listening to this story and what time is it? Share so we can see how far this story has spread and which hearts it has touched. Now let's begin together. Listen. The police car's lights flashed the siren repeatedly, breaking the quiet of the small street at night. General Henry Lawson's car slowly stopped by the roadside as Officer Tom Bennett stepped out with a cold face and suspicious eyes. License and registration demanded his voice, unable to hide his alertness and disdain. Henry slowly took out his military ID and vehicle papers from his pocket and handed them to Tom. "All are valid," he said calmly, his eyes still holding their usual steadfastness. But Tom did not hurry to return them. His gaze quickly scanned the documents, then paused at Henry's face. "You think I'll trust you just because of these papers?" Tom asked challengingly. "This car looks quite fancy, not the kind of vehicle someone like you usually drives." Henry furrowed his brow, but didn't respond immediately. "I served many years in the military. I know my responsibilities," Henry said slowly but firmly. "And I also know your responsibility is to enforce the law fairly." Tom sneered. "The law needs flexibility. It depends on the situation. You can be whoever you want, but my duty is to protect this street." The conversation grew tenser, but Henry maintained absolute calm. "You're suspicious of me just because of my skin color, aren't you?" he asked, his eyes sharp as if trying to awaken Tom's conscience. Tom looked away, embarrassed but not admitting it. Around them, a few bystanders began to stop, their eyes curious and doubtful. "Everyone, please keep your distance and do not interfere," Tom loudly ordered, trying to keep control of the situation. But this incident was not just a routine document check. It was a clash between power and prejudice, between justice and injustice, and above all, a test for human conscience. Can you feel the coldness in Tom's words? The sense that he was not just working by the law, but enforcing an invisible prejudice, racial discrimination. And Henry, he knew this wasn't the first time he had been treated this way. But this time, he was determined not to stay silent. And you, the listener, prepare for what comes next as the confrontation between two men, two forces will escalate and become unstoppable. Inside a small meeting room at the Houston Police Department, Tom Bennett sat attentively listening to feedback about himself. He, a young officer of only 28, was once praised as passionate and decisive on the front line, but was also a name frequently appearing in complaint reports about racial discrimination. Calls of complaint, voices from the community of color, seemed to haunt him like an inescapable ghost. "You must understand that your attitude can affect how the public views the police force," the police chief stressed in the meeting. Tom nodded but kept his own perspective inside. "I'm just doing my job to keep the community safe. If someone behaves properly, I have no problem." That was the kind of statement from officers who believed power was a tool for control, and those who didn't comply would be dealt with harshly. Tom believed strictness would keep the city peaceful, but it also created a thin line between justice and oppression. The heavy pressure of work every day was undeniable. Tom often faced danger and had to make split-second decisions. A colleague once said, "He always has to maintain control. No one wants to show weakness, especially in the police force." But that control sometimes turns into domination, losing empathy and compassion. The internal protection system within the police also plays an important role. When an officer like Tom faces complaints, colleagues often come to their defense, and it's rare for severe punishment to be imposed without clear evidence. This made Tom even more confident, and sometimes he felt he could do whatever it took to maintain order. In a conversation with friends, Tom once said, "If I let things slide easily, then who will keep order?" People need to know the police are not friends but controllers. That mentality, combined with a stressful work environment and protective mechanisms, created a person always ready to use personal power to control others, especially those from minority groups. Can you imagine Tom's inner tension? He is both a protector and a potential source of injustice. And now, standing before General Henry Lawson, Tom must face an undeniable truth. Power cannot be based on prejudice, but must be based on fairness and respect for the law. You, the listener of this story, follow with me how Tom will confront this challenge and whether he can change or not. The story is not over yet. Let's continue together. The red and blue lights of the police cars still flash brightly in the Houston night, casting a cold and rigid glow over everything. Tom Bennett stood beside General Henry Lawson's car, his eyes scanning the documents Henry had just handed over. All were valid and complete: vehicle registration, driver's license, military ID. But inside Tom, those numbers and words meant nothing. "I'm not saying your documents are fake," Tom began, his voice sounding as if trying to convince himself, "but a luxury car like this owned by a black man, that isn't common." Henry frowned, looked directly at Tom with a barely concealed quiet anger. "What are you saying? You can believe I'm a 4-star general in the Army, having served the country for over 20 years. But you don't believe I could legally own a car." Tom cleared his throat, trying to stay calm, but with doubt still lurking in his voice. "I go by my feelings, and my feelings tell me something isn't right." That was the voice of an unconscious bias, a hidden element deep in the mind, influencing how Tom viewed others without reason or concrete evidence. "You know this isn't just personal," Henry replied, his voice now carrying both weariness and challenge. "This is the story of millions of black people every day suspected, slandered, just because of their skin color." Tom looked away, avoiding eye contact. Deep down, he didn't want to admit that because it might mean he was on the side of injustice. The police can be trained, reminded about fairness, but unconscious bias still seeps deeply, saturating every small action. Tom was not the only one making this mistake, but a representative of a larger system where bias policing silently and dangerously exists. Henry felt that contradiction clearly, but he did not let his emotions overpower his calm. He knew that to change, first one must accept looking straight at uncomfortable truths. Can you imagine the feeling of being suspected just because of your skin color? Even when you have done everything right, can you feel the weight of unconscious biases pressing down on Henry's shoulders? In that moment between the night and the police lights, two men stood facing each other, one holding papers, the other holding prejudice, writing a story full of pain and challenge. The red and blue lights continued to flash steadily on the quiet streets of Houston, but suddenly the atmosphere began to change. A few passers-by, hearing the police sirens, stopped out of curiosity, and slowly phones were pulled out, screen lights flickering in the dark. A young woman wearing a hoodie and jeans, holding her phone, took a deep breath, then her voice rang out clearly, unable to hide surprise and excitement. "That's General Lawson. He's the general I just saw in a leadership talk last week." Her words rang like a bell, echoing through the growing crowd. People began gathering closer, their eyes fixed on the sleek black car and the general standing calmly beside the young police officer. Camera clicks and phone videos buzzed continuously, every second, every gesture, every word recorded carefully and meticulously. An old man nearby, who had witnessed many police incidents in the city, said in a deep voice, "Nowadays, no one can work in the dark anymore. Everything is recorded, every action can be exposed." That is the power of social media and public cameras, a new tool, once just a dream, now a sharp weapon to bring justice to light. Images and videos shared on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram spread at a lightning pace within minutes. Hashtags like #Justice for Lawson, #Stop Police Bias, #Houston Voices appeared everywhere, drawing the attention of both the community and social activists. A group of law students organized an online meeting right that night discussing the event and the crucial role of recording in protecting citizens' rights. Officer Tom Bennett felt pressure heavier than ever before. Not only the general, but the entire community was watching his every move. He turned to his colleague. "Have we lost control?" His colleague remained silent, eyes full of worry. Meanwhile, Henry remained remarkably calm, knowing that the truth was being recorded, and one day soon it would speak for him. "Man, do you know in the digital age, power doesn't lie only in the hands of those wearing badges, but also in the hands of every citizen just with a phone in their hand. It is this public recording that has shifted the balance of power, helping the voices of the oppressed to be heard. You can also be part of that revolution. Just dare to speak up, dare to record and share the truth." The streetlights cast a warm yellow glow over the neighborhood, but the atmosphere remained tense and stifling. From across the street, a figure quickly approached Officer Linh Nguyen, an Asian female officer with gentle but determined eyes. Lynn had heard the shouting, sensed the tension surrounding the confrontation between Officer Bennett and General Lawson. She did not rush in. Instead, Lynn chose a soft, cautious approach. "Officer Bennett, please stay calm," she said gently, her voice full of understanding and respect. "We all have a responsibility to protect everyone's safety and also to respect their rights." Tom Bennett turned to Lynn, his eyes still showing discomfort but somewhat softened by her calm attitude. "I'm just doing my duty, Lynn. Not everyone accepts that easily." Lynn nodded, fully aware of the pressure her colleague was under. "I know this job isn't easy. Every day we face danger and judgment. But pressure is no excuse for unfair behavior." Lynn looked at Henry, giving him a gentle smile. "Mr. Lawson, thank you for staying calm in this situation. Your composure is a model for us." Henry responded with a respectful nod. Linh Nguyen was not only an officer in the police force, but also a symbol for those who want to change the system from within. She had faced many barriers, prejudices not only from outside, but also from colleagues. Once during an internal meeting, Lynn proposed a training program on cultural diversity and unconscious bias awareness. "We cannot continue working the old ways without change," she said, her eyes firm. "To serve the community, best we need to understand and respect everyone regardless of skin color or background." But her proposal met opposition, even indifference from many in the room. "We've been working like this for years. No need to change just to be criticized," a colleague said. Nevertheless, Lynn did not give up. She knew change was never easy, but if no one starts, there will never be a difference. Back to the present, Lynn continued working with determination but gentleness. "Tom, let justice and truth lead the way," she said to her colleague. "We need to do better. Do you see in a system sometimes threatened by prejudice and abuse of power, there are always people like Lynn, those who choose to stand on the right side with patience, compassion, and an unyielding will." But the night lights flickered on the quiet street, the police siren in the tense sighs of the crowd blending into a heavy, wordless song. General Henry Lawson remained firmly seated in the sleek black car, his eyes coldly fixed on Officer Tom Bennett. "You must get out of the car, right now!" Tom shouted loudly, his voice full of pressure. Henry, with a calm but firm tone, replied, "I will not leave the car without a legitimate legal reason." Henry's firmness was like a challenge. Tom, angry and confused, stepped closer to the car door, and in a moment of lost control, he touched Henry's wrist to try to pull him out. The touch was not forceful, but it crossed the final limit that a police officer is allowed to make with a citizen, especially someone with rank and high responsibility, like Henry. Immediately, shouting erupted from the crowd around them. "Don't touch him. He's a general. What are you doing? Take your hand off him right now." The fierce reaction from witnesses was like a rising wave flooding every corner of the neighborhood. Linh Nguyen, sensing the seriousness of the situation, quickly rushed over, her voice ringing with authority and decisiveness. Tom let go immediately. Tom was stunned, took a step back, his eyes mixed with shame and embarrassment. "You just crossed the line." Tomlin looked straight at him. "We cannot use power arbitrarily." Henry, though touched, remained calm, his eyes watching the crowd recording, reacting and sharing the incident through electronic devices. "I didn't expect the situation to escalate this far," he said to Lynn. "But I know this is just the beginning of a bigger fight." That touch was not just a personal act by Tom, but a symbol of a boundary no police officer should cross. It is the threshold of conduct where power ceases to be a tool for protection and becomes a tool for oppression and abuse. Can you hear the shouting? The cameras, the sound of a heart breaking? This is not an isolated event, but a call for justice, outrage, and unyielding resilience. In that moment, the Houston night grew brighter because the light of truth had begun to shine. The story continued, and in those tense seconds, a spark of change was ignited. The headlights illuminated the sleek black car, casting long shadows on the street, damp from a light rain. General Henry Lawson remained seated inside, his eyes calm but resolute. After Officer Tom Bennett's recent touch, he knew he needed to firmly but properly protect his rights. Officer Bennett, Henry's voice steady, "You have just violated my rights under the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which protects citizens from unlawful searches and seizures." Tom frowned, but Henry didn't give him a chance to interrupt. "Touching me without a valid legal reason is a violation. I demand you immediately cease this action and do not arbitrarily impose your authority on me." At that moment, Henry pulled out his phone from his jacket pocket and looked directly into the rear camera. "I encourage everyone here to record and document the entire incident. Transparency is the only way for justice to be served." Some in the crowd hurriedly raised their phones, the screen lights flickering as they captured every detail of the confrontation. "I will call my lawyer right now," Henry said, dialing on his phone. The phone rang and a familiar voice answered on the other end. "Mr. Lawson, I hear you. I will be there immediately." Henry's strength did not lie in military power, but in a profound understanding of the law and citizens' rights. He did not rely on a commanding tone, but used knowledge to protect himself and calmness to diffuse conflict. Do you know that understanding your rights is the strongest shield anyone can carry? You may not be a general, but when faced with injustice, just knowing your rights puts the power to defend yourself in your hands. Henry is living proof of that. He didn't need to shout or resist, just stand firm with knowledge and dignity. The story continues, and with every step, Henry teaches us a valuable lesson. True power is not the strength to impose, but the wisdom to know and use your rights properly. As the video capturing the entire incident between General Henry Lawson and Officer Tom Bennett was posted online, it quickly drew the attention of millions across the United States. Within hours, the hashtag #JusticeForLawson became one of the most trending topics on Twitter, accompanied by thousands of comments, shares, and posts expressing outrage at Tom's behavior and admiration for Henry's resilience. Major news outlets such as CNN, NBC, and the New York Times swiftly covered the story, analyzing it from multiple angles, from police authority to racial discrimination within law enforcement. Public reaction was deeply divided. A large segment voiced support for Henry Lawson, seeing him as a symbol of resilience and justice, someone brave enough to stand against abuse of power and prejudice. General Lawson set an example for everyone by remaining calm and knowing how to assert his rights, a Twitter user commented. "We need more people like him to change the system," a Facebook post shared thousands of times. However, on the other side, some defended Tom Bennett and the police force, arguing that he was merely doing his job in a high-pressure, dangerous environment. "Police must act decisively to maintain order," a commenter on Reddit wrote. "We shouldn't rush to judge without fully understanding the situation." This division clearly reflects the deep social conflicts in America, where issues of racial discrimination and police power remain heated and sensitive topics. Meanwhile, the Houston Police Department officially announced the suspension of Tom Bennett and opened an internal investigation to clarify the incident. "We are committed to handling this matter fairly and transparently," the announcement read. The story of Henry and Tom echoes many similar incidents that have shocked public opinion, such as the cases of George Floyd, Rodney King, and Eric Garner. Each case serves as a verdict against systemic wrongdoing, but also as an opportunity for society to awaken and change. Can you feel the power of social media in protecting justice? When technology becomes a tool for truth, when every unfair act can be exposed, abuse of power is no longer a secret. But alongside awakening come significant challenges as society remains deeply divided and needs more sincere dialogues. General Henry Lawson stood alone in his small room, the dim light from a desk lamp casting shadows on his deeply wrinkled face. He slowly looked back to the past, to the days when he was a young man full of passion, never imagining that his skin color would become the greatest barrier in his life. It was a summer evening over 30 years ago when Henry was just 18 years old, a college student in Atlanta. He was driving an old car with a white friend after a study group meeting. Suddenly, a police car flashed red and blue lights behind them, ordering him to stop. "License and registration," a police officer's voice called out with suspicion. Henry provided valid documents, but the officer's gaze was still filled with prejudice. "Do you know why you were stopped?" the officer asked coldly. "I'm not sure," Henry replied, trying to stay calm. "Because you're a black man driving with a white person," the officer bluntly answered. "We need to check if you're breaking any laws." Henry's young companion felt embarrassed, while Henry himself sensed overwhelming shame and injustice. After that stop, Henry could never forget the feeling of being suspected and discriminated against just because of his skin color. He understood that justice does not come naturally, but must be protected and fought for every day. On another evening, Henry sat talking with his father, a seasoned black man, who taught him lessons about resilience and fairness. "You must stand up to create change, but never lose your dignity," his father said, eyes full of faith. "I will become someone who not only fights on the battlefield, but also fights for social justice," Henry promised his father. That past forged a general not only strong in body, but sharp in legal knowledge and compassion. Back to the present, standing before Officer Bennett and the watching crowd, Henry knew he was continuing that journey, this journey against injustice and abuse of power once again. Can you feel the strength of the past and the challenges that shape the Henry we see today? His story is not just a personal battle, but a symbol for all who have been underestimated, discriminated against simply because of their skin color. So, cold light from the hearing room shone on faces intently listening. Tom Bennett stood before the internal review board, shoulders straight, eyes not avoiding, but his voice defensive. "I didn't intend to offend anyone," Tom began, "but this job is very stressful. Every day I face dangerous situations and must make split-second decisions." Board members noted his words, some showing sympathy. "I have served this city for over 5 years and always try to fulfill my duties properly." Tom paused, looking around the room as if seeking understanding from those present. Opposite him, General Henry Lawson stood, his voice strong and sharp. "You are not forgiven, not because I am a general, but because I know my rights, and I did not stay silent when they were violated." Henry's gaze seemed to pierce through, challenging every excuse Tom made. Power is not a ticket to act arbitrarily, and justice cannot be replaced by coercion. A board member asked Tom, "Do you believe your actions meet the ethical standards of the police?" Tom hesitated, his voice lowered. I think I was doing what was necessary to maintain order." Henry quickly responded, "Order cannot be built on fear or oppression, but on respect and fairness." The confrontation between these two men at the hearing symbolizes a larger societal battle. One side represents law, fairness, and reason. The other stands for abuse of power, prejudice, and occupational pressure. Tom stood there knowing his career was on the line. Henry remained firm not only for himself, but for millions of others yearning for justice. As the hearing ended, Henry looked at Tom not only with challenge, but with a profound message. Justice is not anyone's privilege, but the responsibility of all of us. Can you feel the weight of those words? The confrontation is not only in speech, but also in the eyes, in every breath, in every moment of silence. It is the voice of a society yearning for change, and the story of Henry and Tom is just a small part of that larger picture. Keep following with me to step into the next chapters full of challenges and emotions. General Henry Lawson walked back to his office where the walls had witnessed countless stories of war and justice. But now his gaze was no longer just that of a soldier, but a symbol of change, of unwavering resilience. Every step down that familiar hallway stood as proof of the battle he has fought, is fighting, and will continue to fight the battle against injustice, prejudice, and abuse of power. A colleague approached gently and said, "Henry, you are not only the head of the police department, but also the voice of justice for this community." Henry smiled, eyes full of faith. "I'm just one among many brave voices, and what matters is that we never stay silent." And now I want to ask you, the one listening to this story, when you witness injustice, what will you do? Will you look away, ignore it to keep yourself safe? Or will you courageously record, speak out, and stand on the side of justice? True power is not in authority or weapons, but in the courage and will of each individual. If you choose silence, you are contributing to the continuation of injustice. And remember, one day you could be the victim. Be the one who speaks up, the one who does not let truth be hidden. If you want to continue with me telling stories that cannot be silenced, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any new chapters. Finally, I leave you with this reflection. Power is not what you possess, but how you use it. And in this world, misused power is the seed of all injustice. Which side will you choose? Thank you for listening. See you in the next stories. Ipa.